Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. How's it going, Joe?
Good. It's been a bit since we've done these, so I think it's been 2 weeks now. So
Yeah, holidays are upon us. Everything has gotten very busy and yet very quiet at the same time, which is kind of refreshing. It's nice to be just kind of heads down on a couple of projects for a while.
yeah, it does help a
And the
lot.
holidays
So
themselves are pretty nice too.
it helps.
Yeah.
I think it helps that other people take holidays too, so we can sit down and
Yes.
focus on stuff. But
Yeah.
it is what it is. Welcome to the big city.
Yeah.
So this week we wanted to talk about it's kind of a continuation of one of our recent Monday morning data chats, career advice for people who want to become data engineers. So we had some questions following up on our last video where we talked about this, and I think we want to dive a bit more deeply into both some questions that we've gotten as well as some audience comments from a post I put on LinkedIn asking for comments because we weren't going to do the Monday morning data chat last week. So one question that came up was, what is a sponsor? This is something that, Matt, you hit on quite a bit, so maybe you could take a stab at answering what is a sponsor?
Yeah. And I'll actually back up a little bit here to talk about where the theme of a sponsor comes in. My background is in academia, so I have a PhD in math, in pure math, which means that I have a lot of technical skills. It means that I didn't spend my PhD working with a lot of statistics or data engineering or anything that would be closely related to data science, but I have broad technical competencies. And I think for me, in my career experience, I had a number of sponsors who helped me to move from academia into the business world, working in data science first and increasingly these days in data engineering. And so I wanted to talk about how this plays into the transition. If you're from an academic background like that, if you have some kind of an advanced degree in something that's not data science or data engineering per se, but's related. And then I'd like to expand that advice out to pretty much anyone trying to get into data science or data engineering, because I feel like the transition, even if you have a degree that's specific to those disciplines, is not easy. It's really hard to get that first job. And so I kind of want to talk about my process and how I've tried to sponsor other people and how I feel like you might be going about your job search the wrong way if you're not thinking about a sponsor. Okay, so what is a sponsor? A sponsor is a little bit different from a boss in the sense that your relationship to a sponsor is more like being an apprentice as opposed to an employee. And this is especially important for academics because, frankly, we kind of have a hard time making this transition because we don't have any of the business skills that you need to be a really successful data scientist or data engineer. And so somehow you have to get those, and you don't get those in a traditional job, you get those in an apprenticeship. Yeah, your title might be data scientist, but you really need to have an apprenticeship relationship with your boss. And frankly, that's kind of what happened to me. One of my co-authors from the math world was my first boss. Gave me a chance to develop skills in data science and machine learning. And before that, I had another internship where the relationship was similar. Um, and then since then, I've worked with a number of people who have acted as mentors, but also beyond that, have directed me basically as an apprentice to learn new skills. And if you're coming from an academic background, this is definitely something you should think about. But I think in general, to get your first data science job, you just need to recognize that you don't really have the skills you need. And in fact, I'll let you talk to that a bit, Joe, because I think you have a lot of thoughts about the difference between abstract data science education, which might involve things like Kaggle competitions, taking classes for a master's degree, doing toy problems in Jupyter Lab notebooks versus what people actually need to do on the job day to day to bring value to the company that they're employed by.
Yeah, I would say my experience is definitely non-traditional. I guess I was doing data science before it was even called that.
Yeah,
And so there wasn't like the notion of like Kaggle or um, hacker rank or any of this stuff, right? Like that sort of uh, So, I mean, I didn't really come from a theoretical background. Like you and I's
Right.
background is almost polar opposite, to be frank. Like I think
Although
you
we both studied math, but in different
you both studied
ways.
math. Yeah, yeah. I was like applied math and was going to be an actuary, and decided to be a business analyst instead. And so I think that there's just a big gulf. And so I've never really had any like, theoretical training, or I guess if I've done toy problems, it's mostly just been on my spare time because like I was just thrown into the mix, sort of by default, really, where you had to just figure out how to do things in business, in production,
Hmm.
uh, as you were thrown in, like mid-flight, like figure it out before you land on your feet and have to figure it out. So that was more
Yeah.
of my experience. I would say that that's
Yeah.
pretty unusual, though, right?
Right.
Like,
Because back when you started, it was still called data mining, right? There was no notion of data science yet, even. And the profession wasn't really defined in any way.
yeah, and I think the questions that we get quite a bit are, in India they call them freshers. Like I'm a
Hmm.
fresher. How do I get a job?
Hmm.
Um, and I would say it's changed a lot. I would think that my experience is not going to be typical of a lot of people's experience, just because it's a lot more
Right.
competitive in data now. When I was in data, getting into it, like people like me were just data wasn't cool back then, so they didn't have a lot of people in data. Right now, you
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
totally changed. If you had a math degree back in the 2000s, I mean, your options were to go be an actuary, go work for the government, go sell cars, go build homes, because there weren't a lot of job opportunities, really. I guess is my whole point,
Yeah.
right? Be kind of
Yeah.
snarky, but it's kind of true. Now, I would say if you're in, a STEM field, and even if you're not, I mean, just because data is more pervasive, it's easier to, I guess, find jobs with the titles of data scientists. I would say it's also maybe harder if you're starting out to get those jobs. And
Yep.
so,
Exactly.
and it applies to data engineering as well, which is a relatively newer buzzword than data science. So, I think a lot of people ask, well, the common advice I hear is that for you to get a job in data, whatever, insert your uh, um, whatever word you want to add after that, but whether it's data engineering, data science, or whatever comes next, the common advice is do a lot of projects. And this is okay advice, I think, except that the nature of projects keeps changing too. So no longer is it enough for you just to do a Coursera class. I mean, in 2011, I think that might have been the case, even though I think at that time, when Andrew Ng's course came out, it was still like 100,000 people signed up for it or something crazy, like out of the gate. Um, and nowadays, like doing Coursera projects, courses, I think it's nice, but that's I think uh, um, pretty table stakes.
Yep.
So um, and then the other types of projects you could do, the advice I typically give is like figure out something that interests you,
Hmm.
that mimics something close to the profile of the company you want to go work at, and then just get really good at that particular thing. You're not going to get good at everything, but that's kind of the point. The people who say they're good at everything, I think you can discount that claim by quite a bit. There's nobody who's
Right.
great at everything. So the advice really is, maybe make a list of, 5 to 10 companies that really do interest you, and with very good reasons why. Look at the tech stacks. You can find out the tech stacks by looking at the job posting to just sort of surmise what it is they're currently using or looking for, and then go from there. And so
Yeah.
projects are number one thing, but I'd say the nature of projects are shifting quite a bit too. I guess
Yeah.
one of the other points. So
Well, the thing I'd add to all of this, and this applies to your experience as well, even though you were kind of just thrown into quote unquote data science before it was called that, but you just happened to land in a place where your skills were valued. But there's always this gap between someone who's studied the abstractions of vector spaces and clustering and someone in the business world, because none of us come into this with business skills. So in other words, out of school, you don't know how to work with a DevOps team. You probably haven't interacted that much with the cloud. You probably haven't worked with marketing teams. You may not know anything about return on investment, quite frankly. And so when you're getting that first job, following on to Joe's advice, first find good projects, but also you need to understand that you're not really looking for a job in the traditional sense. What you're really looking for is an apprenticeship, and you're going to be an apprentice, and it's going to take a while before you can really contribute. And so you need to find someone who's willing to take a chance on you and say, this is a smart person, they have a good background, I can transform them into a data scientist. Where a data scientist is not someone who can win Kaggle competitions. It's someone who can work with the business and solve practical day-to-day problems and deliver things that will actually help that business. I think, doctors have residency. It's a required part of becoming a full physician. You come out of medical school, you've got an MD degree. What can you do? Almost nothing. No one's going to let you practice medicine without that residency, that additional experience that transforms you into a surgeon or a general practitioner, but someone with a lot of hard skills for treating patients. In academia, we even have something similar, and that is a postdoc. So if you want to get into a research position or even a lot of teaching positions, you're expected to do another, basically apprenticeship after you finish your PhD. And in practice, I think the data science world works the same way. It's just that we don't have a formalized system for it. That's why I tell people, go look for a sponsor, not really a boss, but someone who's going to take you through that process of moving from the abstraction of school or Coursera or wherever you studied into hard pragmatic skills that you can use day to day to help a company. Because that person is not going to get a lot of value out of you for at least 6 months. And that's where the sponsorship comes in, to take that risk and really say, I can help this person and I can transform them into a valuable contributor to my company.
But how do you even get the attention of people these days? I mean, it seems like there's a glut of, especially new and junior data science talent out there. Like, how would you even get your foot in the door to get somebody to sponsor you, or even like take a look at your resume, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. Should we look at some of the listener or the reader comments on the thread on LinkedIn? I think some of
Yeah.
these very well address that point, and they kind of address specifically where new potential hires are kind of dropping the ball on this.
Yeah, I think we'll start from the top here. Matt Sharp, good friend. He wrote one comment that says, "Don't get discouraged. Do your best to stand out." I kind of replied, "Well, I mean,
Right.
how are you going to stand out, though, right?"
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, honestly, anything. And then he wrote, this nugget: learn how to craft a cold call LinkedIn message. And he brought up an example where his company has a lot of open positions right now. And he receives a lot of DMs from people that basically say the same thing. I saw your post, I'm interested in the position, please review my resume. A general piece of advice is learn to zig when others zag. So if everyone is doing the same thing, you need to stand out, and Matt's advice is perfectly on point. I think both for LinkedIn messages or LinkedIn spam, as well as just general personal branding advice.
Right.
The world is insanely competitive, especially in light of COVID, right? Like it messed up the job market, I would say, for people who are just graduating from school. It sucks. We totally get it.
Yeah.
Definitely don't, we're not going to sugarcoat it either. It's just, there's a lot of people just like you who are out there. And by you, I mean people who, specifically people who are out of school looking for their first job in data. It's going to be brutal out there. I'm not going to lie.
Everyone wants a senior person right now.
Everyone wants a senior person, right? Because it's cheaper to find them. Because some companies, made some changes so that senior talent's in the market. That senior talent's not going to cost as much as it used to. That senior talent's looking for a job, and so, but you got to compete and you got to stand out. You can't just sit there and not be active. And so, I think some good suggestions are. And this is good career advice in general, but like learn to brand yourself, learn to stand out. Find in marketing, there's a thing called positioning, right? So you're going to position your personal brand as being this, and you're only going to be this, right? Because in the mind of your customer, who's the person who's trying to hire you, you can only occupy one thing in their mind. So you need to find a niche in data that's very particular and specific to you that nobody else has. Other people call it category design, but you got to figure out, even if you're new, what is it about you that's going to stand out above everybody else? Because if you ain't going to stand out, probably ain't going to get a job. That's just how it is.
Yeah. I would also say you want to stand out, but you kind of need to stop pretending that you're really qualified, if that makes any sense at all. And so by that, I mean, I tend to see these data science graduates and they're like, oh, I'm going to send out my resume and I'm so awesome that all these people are going to hire me. Look, they know you're a junior person. They know that you don't really know anything, no matter how brilliant you are, because you just haven't worked in the right environment. That means that, to Matt Sharp's point, when you're cold calling someone on LinkedIn, so you see they have a job post, in that cold call, first of all, he makes the point you really need to put some effort into it. Understand the company, to your point, Joe, like understand what they want to do. That's how you stand out. Say, hey, I see that you're looking for someone to work on ad targeting in your marketing division. That's something I'm interested in. Talk about some things you know about the area. But then on top of that, say, I'm junior. This is my first job. I'm looking for some place where I can really get experience and develop my talents. Are you aware of any place like that? And that hiring manager is going to look at you and say, well, this is not the person I'm looking for to fill this spot, but you know what? I might be willing to hire them at a lower wage, basically as an apprentice to develop. And then in a year, I might end up with a really talented person who's really great at the job. Or they might send you to someone else and say, hey, you know what? I know this other startup, frankly, doesn't have a lot of money and is just looking for smart people to bring them on board. And they're all learning together. And so you might check there and we can maybe talk a bit on a call and maybe I can give you a recommendation if I'm impressed with our discussion.
Yep. Yeah, because as much as I think you don't want to be known as somebody who's spamming, that gets you instantly ignored. You want to be known as somebody who stands out. And I think you also want to be known as a person who's going to go the extra mile and get to know people, build your network. Obviously, that's common advice too, build your network. But you have to, right? So
and communicate, really communicate.
Communicate's big. On the data science office hours that we do on Friday with Harpreet, shout out Harpreet, great group he has. But in the past couple of weeks, it's that's come up as well, communication skills. And the question is like, well, how do I get more communication skills? Public speaking is a really big one. If you can learn to convey your thoughts. Toastmasters, I think, is a great group, especially if you're in the States. I don't know if it's outside the United States, but being able to effectively communicate your ideas both to one person or more than one person is a great skill. Written skills are great. I used to debate a lot in high school, and I think that.
I don't think I knew that. I don't think I knew you were a debater.
Oh, you didn't?
That's
oh,
awesome.
Yeah. It's
like, no.
Yeah. Now it makes sense. I debated for years, and I think that was single-handedly the thing that gave me a lot of confidence in public speaking, as well as having good rhetorical skills and critical thinking skills. You could, so you can learn to listen to people, I think, in a different way than maybe you're used to. So those are maybe some tips. I don't know if there's like a debate class that's like out in public. I guess that's Twitter now. But joking. Yeah. But yeah, point being, communication skills are absolutely key.
Yeah. I liked Ben Castleton's post on your Twitter thread, or sorry, not Twitter, LinkedIn thread, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
About getting a job, and one of his comments is like, just stop trying to look smart. In other words, especially if you're a junior, be realistic about where you are, and instead of telling the hiring manager how smart you are, maybe ask some questions about what they're doing. In addition to talking about yourself, also ask about their background and what trends they see in machine learning and what kinds of things that you should be doing to develop your career. And that might actually get you a little more attention. If they realize that you're someone who's teachable and who really wants to learn, that might make you a more attractive candidate. Especially if you're junior and they don't want someone who thinks they have all the answers as a junior person, because they understand that you know nothing.
Yeah, it's almost a red flag if you try and come across as, I would say, too much of a know-it-all. I mean, there's a phenomenon called Dunning-Kruger, really, where it's people who know nothing typically act like they know everything, and you don't want to be that person. An experienced person can see right through it. So shout out to Ben for writing that. I think it's a spot-on observation. Dandy Taylor also had, I think, a similar-ish comment. So he said, be proactive in jumping in to learn new things on your own. Be a self-starter. Don't hesitate to reach out and ask for help when you hit a roadblock, i.e. find a mentor. Totally agree with that, Dandy. I think the people who are really successful are the ones who know their circle of competence and keep trying to expand that circle of competence, no matter if it's like a millimeter, each week or something, but they're always trying to push that boundary further, learning new stuff and also reaching out. But like the biggest thing I think that separates people from uh, who I could say I'm more confident in their abilities is when they say I don't know,
Yeah.
right? If you have the ability to say that you
Yep.
don't know something, to me that's a great sign that this person gets it. So
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that.
Another thing I would say about mentorship is that it ties right in with the sponsorship theme. So there's a big difference between a mentor and a sponsor. A mentor's job is to like give you advice as you go along. A sponsor is there to really provide you an actual like first apprenticeship or first job, or to recommend you to someone who can. But having a lot of mentors can lead to sponsorship. Mentorship is a starting point. I've seen many cases where someone gets mentored and then the mentor is impressed enough with the student that they're like, you know what, I'm going to bring this person on as an intern or in a junior position because I can see that they're driven and they're smart and they're teachable, and I can mold them into a really talented member of my team. Or a mentor can recommend you to another sponsor who has a need for your skill set, even if it's very junior.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I would say also it's if you're looking for work or if you're a student and you accept a mentor, like take that mentorship seriously. That person's taking their time out of their very
Yes.
busy schedule to help you.
Yeah.
As we referred to him in another video, don't be an asshole. Don't ask for
Yeah.
advice and then just ignore it.
Right.
So, if I give somebody advice, it's because I think it's good advice. I would expect that you would at least try it out. If you're going to ignore it, then I'm probably going to ignore our mentorship after a bit, right? So,
Yep. Yep.
um, and just realize everything's cyclical. Like this person's investing their time into you because they want to give it, give back and pay it forward and all this
Yeah.
nice stuff. But eventually, if you reach a point in your career where you'll mentor people, then hopefully you'll pay it forward as well. But the other person who's mentoring you, I mean, it's because I know I mentor people because I want to see great talent become greater.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's personal satisfaction in that as well. But I just think if you can see somebody achieve more, then I don't know, it feels good, I guess. Don't know how else to put it.
Yeah, and for me, it's a professional duty. I've mentored a number of people and sponsored some as well. And when I look back at my progress through the career, it only happened because a lot of other people took chances on me. And so I just feel morally that I need to do the same thing for other people wherever I can.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, going back to your comment about being an asshole, having taught for a long time and worked with the students in a lot of capacities, I mean, there's really nothing more rewarding than trying to help a student and then seeing them really take your assistance and just transform, like really learn a new area or understand a new concept or take a new career path. But to your point, it feels very ingrateful. There's huge ingratitude in like asking for help and then not using it, basically just discarding that advice or that time that someone committed to helping you out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Um, Manpreet, she gave another good comment here. I'll just read it to you.
Mm-hmm.
People usually don't treat data engineer as one of the important roles in data science, but it also has a lot of contribution to the data science lifecycle. The hype to be a data scientist or ML engineer is so much that this role is talked rarely among students and professionals. She's lighting it up with that one. I like it. So,
Oh, I completely agree. Now, the funny thing is, I would say at places like Facebook and Google, data engineers are extremely appreciated. In fact, a lot of Google's most famous papers were written by data engineers and not data scientists. What is Google famous for? Things like MapReduce. Well, who created MapReduce? That was data engineers. Of course, data scientists use MapReduce and were probably involved in the whole process, but someone had to figure out what is the Google file system going to look like, or what is Colossus going to look like, and how is that going to help us to process petabytes of data. But I think outside of those really big tech companies, you just don't have the buzziness around data engineering that you do within them.
yeah, I mean, I've seen it kind of move between like you're basically just the roadie for a band, and all the data scientists are the
Mm-hmm.
rock stars up on stage.
Right.
And I think in more data mature companies, data engineers are seen as as important, sometimes more important
Hmm.
than data scientists. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that either one is important. I'm just saying that's a perception of that particular role. Data engineering is a bit newer, and I've seen this sort of criticism coming from especially junior data scientists who figure, oh
Hmm.
well, we'll also work with the data engineers and so forth. I got a couple of things to say about that too. Like, guess which career path is growing fastest right now? Data
Hmm.
engineer. Guess which job pays more? Data and ML engineer. So I don't know. There can be maybe some snobbery towards data engineers, but I think the proof's in the numbers.
Yeah. And if you are long-term interested in a data science career, I think data engineering can segue you into that because people who have worked in the trenches with the practical problems of data just have a better grasp of how it works and how to build practical working systems that serve customers, for example. Or someone who's just hacked on a laptop for a year doesn't have that depth of knowledge.
Nah, and anymore, I think we're starting to see kind of this trend of data scientists wanting to jump into data engineering.
Hmm.
I mean, there's various motivations for that, but I think at the end of the day, people are now realizing the importance of data engineering as a career, whereas even a few years ago, it
Hmm.
was seen as almost heretical in some sense to say that data engineering was anything except sort of a back office job or however you wanted to view it. But I mean, you and I, when we started Ternary, I mean, this is a very contrarian bet because it was at the same time that machine learning was, even more of the rage than it is now. I would say. I think thankfully the noise is settling down on data science a bit. But 2017, 2018, uh, data engineering wasn't quite as visible and prevalent as it is now.
Yeah.
So.
And I think what happened is we both saw behind the scenes the organizational and technical machinery that made practical machine learning possible, and that it just really wasn't possible without having data engineers and the appropriate tools and systems, especially in the cloud, of course, is our primary focus these days.
hmm Yeah, there's definitely been some maturity, and now there's this whole space, ML ops, which is I'm glad is now,
Hmm.
finally getting some visibility. But that's only been in the past few years that's even become
Yeah.
a thing, even though it's been a thing in behind the scenes for a really long time. I think it's now just getting attention. But and so these things tend to happen, right? Like I think we're good at spotting the trends, maybe a few years before it's mainstream. And then maybe that's another piece of career advice too is sort of the old Wayne Gretzky quote, skate to where the puck is going, not to
Right.
where it is. And data is especially like this, where the technologies and paradigms, um, it's almost best if you can set up your career so you're a couple years out.
Hmm.
If you wanted to sort of be at the forefront of things, and that sort of seems obvious in retrospect, but if you really want to set your career up, so you're going to always be surfing on the next waves. You got to go to spotting waves, and so maybe some advice in terms of data science right now. Like I don't know that your ability to apply algorithms and train models is quite as valuable as it was maybe in 2015, 2016, 2017, because that's very much a solved problem now. Computer vision improved a lot. NLP's improved a lot. Even machine learning on tabular data has improved a lot. And so, you know, being able to be a domain expert and apply machine learning to solving problems, I would say is probably a better um, path to take versus just being obsessed with, how do I use PyTorch? I think that's pretty old hat. Um, and so now it's going to be like, how do I do this in production? That's
Yeah.
the questions I'd be asking myself if I'm a data scientist coming out of school.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's increasingly about orchestrating processes. In other words, we know how to train the models for computer vision. We need to figure out how to train those on our company data sets. That's the problem. That becomes much more of an engineering orchestration and really organizational problem. So I think good data engineers have some management skills like lateral, managing up, and just communicating very efficiently about what needs to happen and then working with the team to get it done.
Yeah. So I think the cross discipline, like, we made another comment a bit ago where I think software engineering is probably going to blend with data engineering. I think that's the thing too. But now we're getting off
Yeah.
into sort of left field. But the point is the field's changing a lot, right? So the stuff you learned in school too, you got to keep in mind. A lot of the classes that you're taking at school may or may not be current. I know the schools are going to do their best to make sure the stuff's current because they have no incentive to give you stuff that's stale, and they have no motivation to. But the fact is, things change so quick that it's even hard for professors. I mean, God's sake, we're professors at a university, and it's hard enough for us to keep on top of the latest trends and multiply that by every other professor out there. And I mean, everyone's doing the best they can, but at the end of the day, I think it's upon you as a student, as a new entrant into the field, to keep on top of stuff too and forge your own path. At the end of the day, your career is your career, nobody else's, and you got to take responsibility and ownership for it.
I mean, I still believe that most of what you learn in school is going to be valuable, but it turns out to be valuable more as almost general education. It like teaches you about the context and how various people have done things in the past. But the specifics of your job will very likely look quite different from any school project or assignment that you completed.
Yeah, and I guess another thing too is don't get religiously attached to certain technologies. This is a big mistake I see people, especially when they're coming out of school, is like, well, like I'm the TensorFlow guy or girl, right, or whatever. Like this is what I'm going to stake my job on, and trust me, TensorFlow, PyTorch, all this stuff will be forgotten about in 5-10 years. Nobody will care if you can focus on
something new.
Yeah, so it's something new. There's always new approaches. I mean, deep learning. I mean, that wasn't really even that popular until, 2013, 2014, right? Is when you start seeing improvements, that becoming more mainstream and adopted. But when I was doing ML in the early 2010s, like neural nets were actually considered passé, like nobody thought they would work. And then all
their
of a
curiosity.
Sudden, then deep learning, well, that threw that argument out the window because all of a sudden now everyone's doing neural nets, right? So you just never know where things are going to take. And I think if you can understand the fundamentals of the field, go back to basics, understand things like SQL, shell scripting, just the fundamentals, that also sets you up, I think, for a better career. Because then you're not so attached to different trends as they come and go. It's you understand the underlying principles, you can pick things up and apply it. So.
Yeah, things like understanding DevOps, understanding orchestration, cloud technologies in general. Cloud certifications, if we're getting real specific, are extremely valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's not like getting an AWS architect cert is magically going to make you a great AWS architect, but it shows some effort. It shows that you've gone beyond the basic education that you have, and your effort has gone beyond that of a lot of other candidates who are just out of school.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have to do another episode sometime on certifications. I think that's some we get asked about a lot too, but I think we're running out of time on this talk here. So I'd say to recap, kind of covered a lot of stuff to recap, but we'll do our best. Get a sponsor. Learn to ask good questions. Learn to ask good questions from people. Learn to send good cold call messages and emails to people. Learn how to introduce yourself. Personal branding is key. You should
stop trying to look smart. Basically,
start trying to look
realize
smart.
your limitations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you said, good questions. Yeah.
Actually, one thing I wanted to hit on before we take off, like Carlos. How did we forget Carlos's comment here? He mentioned as another piece of advice, beyond being passionate about data and developing technical skill, learn how to scope data projects appropriately and practice holding others accountable by having them do some of the work instead of committing to do it all yourself. Data is a team sport. If you master these two skills, you'll be better than 90% of all data engineering professionals. Totally agree. Thanks, Carlos. Sorry we didn't get to that earlier. That's spot on.
So. And the point is, this is not stuff you're going to learn in school. It just won't happen. I mean, maybe if you work in a research lab, you'll kind of broadly learn some of these ideas of scoping projects. But I think one idea I had is like, hey, if I'm emailing a hiring manager and I'm right out of school, I can talk about things I want to learn. And I can talk about, I really want to learn to work as a team, and I want to understand scoping, and I want to understand communicating with my stakeholders. If I'm looking for someone for a job, that's going to tell me that this person is really looking to evolve into the day-to-day of the role and becoming a great, I don't know if data science manager is the term, but like a great person who could execute and deliver projects. Let's say that. That's going to
Yeah.
tell me that you've got the right idea about where you're going.
No, the person who can execute and deliver projects is valuable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's valuable in any company. I don't care if you're doing data
Yeah,
or making cookies or whatever. Like if you can execute and deliver
right.
projects, that's awesome. You should be that person. If you can't
Yeah.
execute and you can't deliver projects, I don't know what to tell you. So
Or at least you should be learning to, right? And that email is going to tell me that you're trying to learn how to execute and deliver projects, and that makes a big difference.
hmm
So, yeah,
yeah. And just understand too, like you're not going to be perfect. I mean, nobody is, and I
yep,
don't think even
that's right.
seasoned veterans uh still trying to improve their skills every day. So just understand like this is a
Yeah,
continuous lifelong journey, and if you're just getting started, then welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. So
yeah. And I mean, maybe that's part of the point. Like for me, that's part of the appeal of being in data engineering is that I constantly get to learn new things. My skill set doesn't stagnate. I'm not going to be sitting at my desk hitting the same button every day for 20 years.
and if you're
It's an
sitting there
exciting
hitting
place
the
to
same
be.
button, yeah, if you're hitting the same
Yeah,
button for 20 years, I mean, there's going to be a robot that's going to do your job pretty soon anyway. So
exactly.
don't get complacent. Let me see. So recap a few things, and yeah, I think that about covers it. So
Yeah,
we'll just
we've talked
we'll be
for a
back.
long time.
We ramble for a long ass time.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, but we'll be back next week with some more Monday morning data chats. So have a good Monday. Talk to you soon.
Take care.